Cartoon Network is no stranger to having popular shows. Most of you can name a dozen of them on the top of your head. And what do you do when you have yourself a successful show? Simple. You make merchandise from it. There's a lot of Cartoon Network merchandise out there, and if a show happens to be one of the most popular, then it will receive a crap ton of merch. Powerpuff Girls, Ben 10, Adventure Time, the merch for these shows is endless. However, not every show can be as popular as them. Some shows can still have a decent amount of merch, while others barely have any at all. And for those shows that barely have any merch, it makes the merch they do have a treasure to obtain, such as the subject for today. On August 18th, 2000, the world was introduced to Cartoon Network's newest pilot, Sheep in the Big City. It revolves around a sheep, named Sheep, who goes on the run from a top-secret military organization who wants to capture him for their sheep-powered ray gun. So Sheep decides to settle in, well, the big city. Yeah, this is one of those shows. It lives up to its title at the very least. The pilot went well, and the show proper began on November 17th. It was a huge hit on its premiere, but afterwards, the ratings stagnated. This, of course, caused the show to be cancelled after only running for 2 seasons. Nowadays, Sheep is known as one of the more obscure cartoons developed by Cartoon Network, which is unfortunate. I watched a few episodes, and while I wouldn't call it my favorite show, it certainly was good. Clever dialogue, decent animation, and some cutaways which, while I'm not as keen on, at least made the show stand out compared to its CM contemporaries. When it came to merchandise for Sheep on the other hand though, well, let's just say it was no Powerpuff Girls. Sheep didn't have the amount of merch that Dexter's Lab, Cow and Chicken, or heck, even Johnny Bravo got. Considering the show ran for under 2 years, and was more or less under the radar during its run, there was just not much merch associated with the show. Yet, that doesn't mean the show had no merch whatsoever. For example, the show most famously had some Subway toys, released in the spring of 2001. I don't have any of them, but they look fun for what they are. However, considering that the show is about a literal sheep, there would be one piece of merch above all others you'd expect from a show like this. A plush toy. Why a plush? Well, because our main character Sheep is a sheep, and sheeps have wool, which occasionally can be used for plush stuffing. Therefore, making a plush of Sheep seems like a no-brainer. Well, did they? Considering the video you're listening to right now, the answer is an obvious yes. Presenting the official Sheep in the Big City Sheep plush. The first time I discovered this plush existed was quite a number of years ago with this eBay listing, which advertised the plush as a prototype. Was never released on the open market. Yeah, no. This was a released product. I'll get into its release history later in the video, but suffice it to say, this isn't a prototype. It's just very scarce. But it was still a nice find when I saw it for the first time. I never knew a plush based on Sheep in the Big City existed. Despite my fascination, I didn't buy it. I hadn't watched the show at the time, so while I was interested in it, I passed on it because I saw no need to buy it. Yet, that particular plush of Sheep never really left my head. It was just stuck there. Maybe one day I'd find another listing and buy one for myself. Though, considering how few have shown up for sale over the years, and the fact I barely ever searched for it when I was interested, it was understandable if I was actually going to go through with buying one, regardless if it would be cheap or not. Well, needless to say, I eventually went through with it. Yep, not too long ago, I finally got my hands on Sheep, and dang, was it awesome to finally see him up close in person. And record it. Yeah, Sheep doesn't only have not a lot of merch, his plush has also never been seen in a video before. As such, this presents a unique opportunity. This plush has never been showcased in an internet video, so I'm going to be the first to review him. This will allow Sheep here to get the proper inspection he deserves, since it has been long overdue. With all that said, welcome to a look back at the Sheep in the Big City mini plush. Here's the plush. Well, that is Sheep alright. He's a sheep. Yeah. Look, Sheep does have a nice design. He's probably one of the most well-designed sheep I've ever seen. But compared to his Cartoon Network contemporaries, his design feels a bit underwhelming, considering he's just a sheep. Yet, the fact that the plush designer still put in the effort and captured his simple design so well is a great achievement. Kudos to them. They captured Sheep's head very well. It's the shape Sheep's head should be, with his face having a downward curve it should. The plush's skin has a peachy tan color, even though in the show, Sheep's skin color is not as saturated. It's not too big of a difference, but it is noticeable. Sheep has a small stub of white plush on the top of his head to signify his wool hair. It's a bit smaller than it should be, but it gets the job done. His mouth is done through simple black stitching. It's nice, even if he is frowning. The most famous image of Sheep has him frowning, so it makes sense why the plush would have it. It sure would be something if they decided to have him smile. Now that is a happy sheep. His nose is 2 small lines of black stitching. Simple, but gets the job done. His eyes are a buttery yellow, whereas in the actual show, his eyes seem to be a shade of green. So again, not exactly accurate, but still good. Their shape is captured well, as big circular dots bulging from his head, which gives the plush a funny look. It's as if he saw something he shouldn't have. Poor sheep. His pupils are on the other hand very accurate. They are just small, black circle pieces attached to the eyes, but that's all he needs. His ears are attached to the head well, with some stitching to give the inner ear some depth. Though, on my sheep at least, one of his ears tends to lean more downward, while the other leans upward. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Heck, it's technically accurate, but I prefer to try and keep my sheep's ears within a similar proportion to one another. His body looks great. It's covered all around by a white coat of plush wool with some nice detail that really matches its appearance to the cartoon. The plush is filled with soft polyester stuffing, making it soft to hold in your hand, and that's awesome. The tail is a great representation as well. Short, stubby, but sturdy too, just like the body. Though, some of the white wool detail isn't covering the bottom of the tail as well as it should be. Yeah, one big issue that can affect this plush is that some areas may not be covered by the wool completely, which doesn't look great. Thankfully, there are barely any spots on mine, and they are barely noticeable unless I look closely, so he looks great. Though, the wool could come off if you pull on it too hard, so watch out for that. You don't want sheep to have an unwanted shave. His arms and legs look good. They both got the 2 stubby toes that his hooves should have. The plush is standing in an upright pose, though you can make him go on all 4s, even if his head is stuck looking on the ground. Looking at his top left arm here, you can see where his main tag used to be, as evidenced by the plastic hook still being there. Since it wasn't cut off, I guess the tag fell off on its own accord. That's unfortunate, since I can't record the tag in person. Here's what the main tag looks like when it's still attached to the limb. Speaking of his limbs, when I first received the plush, I inspected it. I needed to make sure the plush had arrived safely with no damage. Thankfully, there was none. However, while inspecting, I quickly made a shocking discovery. His limbs are bendable. This is a bendable sheep plush. How did I not know this before? In all the Worth Point and Macari listings I've seen of him, not one of them mentioned this pretty important aspect of the plush. The fact that no one mentioned this makes me wonder if any of them even knew he could bend, which might mean that most of these sheep plushies just were never bent much after all this time. And considering how old this plush is, that's crazy to think about. Oh, and not only are the limbs bendable, but the tail is too. I'd never expect them to give the tail bendability, but I welcome it. The stock image of sheep had him looking like this, so I thought maybe the head could also bend to match how it looks in the image. Sadly, the head can't bend. It's stuck like this. But that isn't too much of a letdown. The fact that he can bend at all is good enough for me. His limbs can move left and right, and you can move them up and down. The tail is the same way, though due to its short and stubby design, it's more difficult. Sheep's limbs in general are not too long to begin with, and are always positioned to always be extending outward, so bending his limbs in general can be a little tricky. You can't bend sheep as well as, say, the GE Sonic plush, but he can still pull off some goofy poses despite his age. So yeah, that's how much he bends. It isn't perfect, but I'm happy they still made him like this. It gives him so much personality compared to the average Cartoon Network plush. There aren't many posable Cartoon Network plushies, so the fact Sheep is one of the few that can bend makes him all the more unique. Finally, here's the touch tag. The back is blank, but the front has some standard information on it, though there's no reference to Cartoon Network themselves, which is strange since every other plushie based on a CN character has the network's logo on them. So why the lack of any branding? That's curious. Speaking of curious, on the tush tag, the two manufacturers listed are Toy Concepts and Curious Toys. Now, those are some of the dullest names I've ever heard for toy manufacturers, making researching them a bit more difficult than I'd like. Toy Concepts here has a nice logo at least. However, it's with Curious Toys that we find one of the more shocking revelations of this plush, because while researching this video, I slowly realized something. If you don't know, the production company behind Sheep in the Big City was called Curious Pictures. One of the companies listed as a manufacturer of this plush is, of course, Curious Toys. Curious? Curious? Coincidence? I thought it was, and I was just overthinking it. However, while working on this video, I discovered that my curiosity was onto something. You see, the tush tag signifies where each manufacturer was located. Toy Concepts in Freehold, New Jersey, and Curious Toys in New York City, New York, with a zip code of 10003. Why is that important? Because Curious Pictures was also based in New York City. Could it just be another coincidence? I also found a man online who apparently worked with Curious Toys during this time, and they state the parent company was Curious Pictures. As you can see, he also was located in New York City. Maybe he was referring to a different Curious Pictures? Well, on the Internet Archive, Curious Pictures used to run a website, and back in 2001, this was their website. Looking at the director's page, we can clearly see Mo Willems is one of them. Willems, if you aren't aware, is the man who created Sheep in the Big City. So this is indeed their website, if you had reservations beforehand. What's important for us, though, is the section titled Toys. When you click it, you are sent to a page which shows some of their construction toys, known as the Curious Bones. For our purposes, though, as you can see, they called this subsidiary Curious Toys. So they did create toys. Need more proof? In 2002, Curious Pictures founders bought back the company from Intellifilm. In this Animation World article, it states again explicitly that this company made Sheep in the Big City and ran Curious Toys. Here's another article from Shoot Online that states the same things, but adds that Curious Toys made the Curious Bones construction toys, which we just saw advertised on their website. If you still need cold hard proof, on Curious Pictures' webpage, if you click on Opportunity Knocks, it'll show you an advertisement for freelancers and interns they wanted to hire at the time. When you scroll to the bottom, it shows you their address. And guess what location it says? New York, New York, zip code 10003. The same location Curious Toys was listed at on the tush tag. It's official. Not only does Sheep in the Big City have a plush toy, but it was designed by the same company that produced his show. That's so cool! This gives the plush so much charm than it already has. What other Cartoon Network shows can say they had their plush toys manufactured by their show's own production studio? First, I learned he was bendable. Now I'm finding out he was made by Sheep's own creators. Speaking of bendability, while it's awesome for Sheep's production studio to be involved with the making of this plush, it's clear that they weren't the ones behind the designing of Sheep as bendable. Remember Toy Concepts? Well, they were the ones who contributed to making Sheep posable the way he was. How the heck does a YouTuber like me know something as specific as that? Well, remember that tush tag? It has a patent number. And because I am researching far beyond what I should for a Sheep plush toy, I did the sensible thing and looked it up. And now, I can show you all Sheep's patent of being a posable toy animal. It was filed in 1997, before Sheep in the Big City existed, as Toy Concepts was filing it for any other future bendable stuffed toys they would make, which Sheep here became a part of. We can even see images of how the bendability is designed into plushies, using some examples. And we know this is Toy Concepts, because the guy filing it was from Freehold, New Jersey, the same place Toy Concepts was stated to be located on the tush tag. This Sheep plush, I'm telling you, he's quite the little guy. He has a great story. It's incredible getting to know the full picture of his history, and I'm glad to finally be the one to help show it for the world to know. So now that we have reviewed the plush and learned who exactly made him, you might have wondered if we're close to being done. However, we still have some history of the plush to discuss, namely, where it was sold originally. For the longest time, I didn't know where they sold this Sheep plush. Maybe he was sold in your typical toy store, or a retail chain. There was one place that went over my head though, and that was Cartoon Network's own web store, the Cartoon Network Shop. Their official website where you could pick all sorts of merchandise relating to their shows. They would even sell shop-only exclusives, such as plushies. Perhaps Sheep was one of those exclusives, and I should see if the listing for Sheep was archived. Like I said though, this went over my head, which I attribute to what I discussed earlier in regards to Sheep's tush tag and its lack of Cartoon Network branding. It also never mentions the Cartoon Network shop in any way. Compare this to the Ed, and Eddy bobblehead plushies, which state the Cartoon Network shop, and its link on their tags, indicating they have been sold there. Since Sheep didn't have any mention of the CN shop, I never considered that was probably sold on the website. So, what changed my mind? Well, it was surprisingly enough, Brack. Yeah. In the Adult Swim cartoon, The Brack Show, the Sheep plush actually appears. This was a strange thing for the Brack Show to do, since it's an Adult Swim show showing a piece of merchandise from the main Cartoon Network lineup. That said, it was nice of them to have the plush make a cameo. It's probably the most noteworthy thing the plush was ever shown in. When I learned this while researching the history of this plush, I began to wonder if there was any further discussion online about this particular scene. This led me to two websites. A mention on Anime Superhero Board in 2001, where someone mentioned Sheep's appearance at the time, and a strange trivia website that revealed that Sheep was in fact sold on Cartoon Network's website. That was enough confirmation for me anyway. So, the search was on. Would I find an archive of Sheep being sold on Cartoon Network's website? Well, it thankfully didn't last too long. I had a little trouble figuring out how to navigate smoothly, but once I got it, I found the Sheep section. There he was. And hey, here's where that famous stock image of Sheep originated. I didn't know where it was from before, but now we know the source. Anyways, using the archive, we can actually show the plush's history of being sold quite well. It was indeed sold as a CN exclusive, which is great. Exclusive merch from the network shop. They listed Sheep as a mini plush, listing him as 3 inches tall. This height only really applies to when he's on all fours though. When he's standing, he's 7 inches. The shop does list sheep as posable, which is unlike all future listings. It only retailed for $7.99 in 2001. That's cheaper than I thought it would be, but since it was advertised as a mini plush, it makes sense that it'd be rather cheap. The plush went up for sale sometime before or on July 12th, since that is when the earliest archive is. It was the first sheep product on their site. Other than the plush, they also later added a hat. Ooh. And that was it. Yep, the Cartoon Network shop only ever sold 2 sheep products. A bit disappointing, but expected. As you can see here, the sheep plush was being sold as late as December 6th. Notice the toys and games section is gone, despite having been there previously. The plush's appearance here still suggests it was sold that day. The following day, the hat was the only product that could be purchased. The final archive of the sheep section, on December 12th, confirms only the sheep hat was still available, whereas the plush had vanished. With these dates, we can deduce that the plush was only sold for around that half a year stretch, entering the shop sometime around July 12th and leaving after December 6th. By the end of December, sheep quickly disappeared from the shop entirely, and with the show itself ending in April, no more exclusive sheep merch would be produced for the shop. How sad. Okay, now that we know sheep's whole backstory, we still have a few questions left to answer. Where can you buy sheep nowadays? What is his rarity? How much can he sell for? Well, the only places you can buy him nowadays are when he shows up on secondhand websites, most notably eBay and Mercari. As for his rarity, well, he is unfortunately one of the more rare Cartoon Network plushies out there. This makes sense. He was sold as an exclusive on the Cartoon Network shop, during which they only sold him for only around half a year. He was sold in 2001, a time period when there weren't as many people shopping online as there are today. That, and even at the time, Sheep in the Big City was one of Cartoon Network's least popular shows. As such, sheep sold much less compared to other products. Combine that with the previously mentioned window of time you could buy him, and you're left with a plush that would rarely ever show up for sale on these secondhand websites. This can be backed up by the amount of eBay listings WorthPoint has archived. You want to know how many archived sheeps were sold on eBay in the last 24 years? 7. There were only 7 listings that I could find. Now, he has appeared on other websites over the years, such as Mercari, but those listings aren't archived to the same extent as eBay. So the fact that eBay, one of the most famous websites relating to selling discontinued products, only has 7 listings after nearly a quarter of a century is a testament to sheep's rarity. So the plush is rare and only can be found secondhand nowadays. But how much will it actually cost to buy one? Well, honestly, it's a bit of a roller coaster. His prices are all over the place. What do I mean? Well, back in January, I was on eBay looking at Cartoon Network merch. I stumbled across this listing for sheep. I hadn't searched for the plush in a while, and this brought the plush back into the forefront of my mind. However, it was a bid. Starting price $50. The plush looked great, having his hang tag and all. I didn't feel like bidding on it though, so I let him be. I was interested in how much he would finally sell for though, as there were a few watchers for him. Once the auction ended, I searched through the sold listings, and discovered that the plush ended up selling for $152.50. Wow. Yeah, he had his tag. He's a rare plush of a forgotten CN show, and it was an auction, but dang, that's a lot of money. It hasn't been relisted, so I believe it actually sold, which is crazy to witness. What's crazier is that this wasn't the only sheep plush available at the time. Remember earlier when I mentioned Mercari? There was a sheep plush on there for around $48 at the time the eBay one sold. That's a That's a third of the price. Did none of the eBay bidders check Macari before bidding? They could have bought that one and saved $100. Maybe they really wanted to tag one. Who knows? Heck, not too long afterwards, that same seller on Mercari sold another sheep for nearly the same discount in price. So all this tells me is Mercari sheeps seem to go much cheaper than eBay sheeps, if the discount in prices mean anything. This talk of prices begs the final questions left to answer. How much did I pay for my sheep? Where did I buy him? Was I the one who bought one of the Mercari ones listed by the same seller after I skipped the eBay auction, considering they were much cheaper to buy? Well, I did buy mine on Mercari, but it wasn't either of those listings. It was actually a stroke of luck. When I searched for Sheep in the Big City plush on Mercari, I saw that $48 sheep listing. That was the cheapest I had ever seen him, and was frankly a good price. However, I passed on buying him too. Why? Honestly, I was cheap. Despite that, the pull towards me buying this sheep plush was stronger than ever, especially since I saw that eBay auction go down. If I was finally going to buy it, I didn't want to spend over $150. I thought I should just pay the $48. But before I made a final decision, I did something I usually don't do much. I scroll down. Occasionally, someone might list plushies that are the same under different titles. So, I was under the assumption that there'd be a very small chance that somebody had listed another sheep, hopefully for a cheaper price, under a less specific title related to sheeps. Well, guess what? I got lucky. Really lucky. I found this listing. It was just a simple title. Sheep plush. However, I knew that face. Those bulged out eyes. That plastic tag on that specific hand. Where the tush tag was located. This was a Sheep in the Big City plush. But when I saw the price, I was jaw dropped. $8. Yep. I paid a price that was only a penny more than its retail price from 2001. That's absolute insanity. And you know what? It was pure chance. The listing never specified it was a Sheep in the Big City plush, just sheep plush. Without any clear Cartoon Network branding, the seller I bought sheep from only saw a regular sheep toy, which makes sense. As I mentioned way back, Sheep is one of the lesser known Cartoon Network characters, so his design doesn't stand out to the masses. The average person can look at the Powerpuff Girls or Gumball and immediately know who they are, whereas with Sheep, they'll just see a normal sheep. Considering the circumstances of that moment, what with the eBay auction that had just ended, me finding it for a fraction of that price was a steal. If the seller had known this was a Sheep in the Big City plush, they would have listed it for a much higher price. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but thank you, Sheep, for not having your hang tag. You not having it most likely saved me a lot of money. So yeah, that's how I got my sheep plush. With that, his price can range anywhere from retail price to become expensive from an auction battle. And since he is elusive, the few sheep fans there are will try to spend much to get him. Now, with that being said, I'd personally say a tagged mint sheep could go for around $60 to $70. Maybe more if that eBay auction wasn't a fluke. A non-tagged sheep should be around $40 to $50. And if the plush is damaged in any way, like one of the bendable limbs breaking, it should be much less than $40. But as I have also shown, if you look in the right place, you could find one for very cheap. Wow, this was much longer than I thought it'd be. I didn't expect I could talk this much about a sheep plush, but I guess that's researching for you. It took me down a rabbit hole if you couldn't already tell. It was an honor reviewing this plush, and showcasing his history. I hope this video will give Sheep here the recognition he deserves, and maybe he'll gain a new flock of fans as well. He's a part of Cartoon Network history, and a relic of a bygone era. The online Cartoon Network shop he came from was really the only place you could find official merch for a show like his. And it's gone. The Cartoon Network shop shut down in March of 2021 due to what I assume was low traffic, so we'll never get exclusive merchandise like Sheep here again. That's unfortunate, especially because some Cartoon Network shows just won't receive any official merch ever again. I hope that'll change one day, so until then, when we do find a piece of merchandise from those shows that barely have any, well, as I said at the beginning of this video, it makes it a treasure when we finally obtain them.